Welcome to the Women's Dermatologic Society's webinar series, featuring advice and information from expert physicians in the field of dermatology. These webinars support the career and professional development of dermatologists by creating a place to find the support of others who do what they do. Brought to you by the WDS Young Physicians Committee and Galderma. This particular video was created to provide early career dermatologists advice and tips from leaders within the field on how to cultivate excellent professional leadership skills. Part 4. Leadership Development Tips.
So I think that leadership of an office requires a team approach. I look at my team somewhat similar to the way I would look at a soccer team. Each person has their own specific role on that team, and one person may be the fullback because they do well at that position and they believe in that position and they can succeed at that position, and another person may be the right forward. The person who's the fullback is part of an overall other team called the defense. And the person who's the right forward is part of another portion of that team called the offense. But we all have to work together and we all have to collaborate in order to score a goal. So that's the way I like to look at it, much akin to a sports team.
Key qualities to being a good leader depends to some extent on the circumstance, but I think across the board there are some very uniform characteristics that most people think about and look for. First and foremost for me is being genuine, having an ability to communicate effectively, but also to inspire others. Being as transparent as you can, depending on the circumstance and the individual situation. And I think really being open in terms of open to the fact that you may not have all of the answers, and being open in terms of other people's opinions.
Assuming more responsibility as a resident, and I think that that becomes the path. Attaching yourself to leaders that you admire and assuming responsibility, becoming a visionary, being respectful, listening. I think that all of these are key qualities of leadership that you will rely on and use long term.
But if you have somebody you really admire, go up and introduce yourself. Go meet them. Do not be shy about that. There's one thing leaders love, and that is they love to share their knowledge. And that's one of the main points that I've had as a leader is I think you have to reach back and put your hand out and bring somebody up.
Well, I own my own business, so I have a busy private practice that I run with a big budget and zero training. And so as I've learned to be a leader, one of the most important things that I've learned from Women's Derm and from running committees and from interacting with industry is diplomacy. You might not always be right. And even if you're right, someone else may have a different point of view. So the leadership skill of diplomacy has really helped me as a boss. It's helped me listen to my employees, interact with them in a way that is a team, a group, rather than a pyramid, which is how I learned in residency. The person on top tells the person below what to do, and that's how it is. And that's not really how reality is when you're running a business.
I think that to be a good leader, you have to approach it with a sense of service. To me, the best leaders are servant leaders who don't ask people to do things that they themselves wouldn't do. I try and keep that in mind when I'm working with others or I'm mentoring a student, that I'm not asking them to do things that I haven't done myself and that I wouldn't be willing to do myself.
The things that I tell women all the time when they're thinking about their careers is try and go look for an organization that has strong female leaders at the top, because they're accessible to you in the organization, and it's usually a reflection of how organizations feel about diversity, especially in their leadership roles.
I think the most important thing is to have the vision, have an idea, and then make it work. You know, create a plan of how you're going to pursue this idea, and don't give up. I think the important thing is if you have an idea about something, then you go ahead and figure out how to make that idea work and don't give up.
I think it's important, no matter what you do, is set aside time to make sure you're not burning yourself out. So I think there's a lot of enthusiasm early on in that first year after residency and that second year after residency when you're in practice to really go, to full steam ahead, and I think that's great. But I would really encourage everyone to take that first year after residency, if I can give a practical tip, is use that year to really make yourself a really good clinical dermatologist.
And I have to say that when I started in leadership, I'm not sure I embraced fully the concept of the learning and the help that you can get. And I now think that any woman can be a great leader if they pay attention to it and get a little help and do a little learning.
I think it's very important for every dermatologist to advocate for themselves and for our specialty, because we're all in this together and you can't do it on your own. So when you advocate, we need to do it with the organization. I mean, that's something what I think the WDS is so important for. It helps develop and mentor people to be leaders and advocates for the future. It shows us that we have to be in this together. We network together, we work together. And as a voice, unified voice, you can make change.
I've worked in industry for 20 years and I've worked with a number of professional organizations in different specialties. The WDS is definitely different. What I've appreciated about the WDS is their open-mindedness in terms of partnership. The other thing that I think may be unique is the respect that the board holds for each other, and particularly the people who have been the leaders of the WDS in the past have continued to contribute to the success of the WDS after they become presidents.
Just by being part of women's dermatology and serving on the committee, you'll sort of understand how organizations operate in terms of their internal structure. Once you become a member of a committee, it's likely you'll be involved with other committees, and that can lead to obtaining a position on the board of Women's Derm. And by doing that and attending sessions like the MELD session, which is really geared into culturing our young women and men into leadership positions in WDS, that naturally will progress from experience, from being involved in various committee structures, understanding the missions of Women's Derm, attending meetings like MELD, you will naturally progress into a leadership position.